Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello, and welcome to the Publishing for Profit podcast. This is your host, Joel Mark Harris. Today, we have an amazing guest on, Ricky Shetty, who is an Amazon best-selling author. He's a TEDx speaker and a digital nomad. What is a digital nomad, you might ask? Well, he tells you on this show. We have a great conversation about internet marketing, about traveling, and his biggest passion of all, which is fatherhood. And he talks about his blog, daddyblogger.com. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. Hey, Ricky, welcome from the Philippines. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing, Joel. Great to reconnect with you, my friend.
Yeah, it's been some time, 4 years since, I guess, we last talked and we last really connected. So obviously you've been traveling, you've been experiencing the world with over 80 countries. That's amazing. What do you think is the biggest life lesson you've learned through your, travels for like the last 2 years?
Yeah, so just like Joel, I'm actually from Vancouver, so we're both Vancouver boys. And I ended up leaving Vancouver back in 2016, so 4 years now. I left Vancouver with my wife. I married to Anne, and then we have 3 kids. Our daughter's 8, and then our son's 6, and then I have another son who's 4, so 8, 6, and 4. And then we actually traveled around the world for a whole year. We sold a place in Vancouver, house, a car, furniture, books, whatever people were willing to buy, and we ended up traveling. So my kids have already been to 28 countries by the time they turned 5. Pretty incredible, because like when I was 5 years old, I'd only been to like Canada, US basically. So my kids have been to like 28 countries, and I personally have been to 81 because I did a lot of travel before I got married and had kids. So it's been amazing, Joel. Seeing the world, seeing the incredible natural beauty, also the man-made beauty. Like I've seen the pyramids, I've seen Iguazu Falls, Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, all these world wonders. We went on an African safari, so we got to see lions in the wild and elephants in the wild, giraffes in the wild. We got to see Dubai, which is like the tallest building in the world. So in terms of what your question is about what have I learned, I could write a book. I know we're going to be talking about books. I could wrte a lot of books.
We'll be talking about your book for sure, your books, plural.
Yes. So in terms of what have I learned from travel generally, I feel like people are very kind and hospitable. Like sometimes the media will say, "Oh, these places are dangerous," or "Travel's dangerous," or you need to be careful. And there's that whole stereotype about danger associated with travel. I want to kind of reconstruct that stereotype and say that travel is very safe. You have to be street smart, not walk around at night, etc. But I think in general, people are good. That's something I really, really realized. People want to help. They're kind. You don't need to worry about being stranded or something, because people always help you. And I'll give you a quick example, Joel.
Please.
We're doing this interview during the time of COVID, big crisis globally. And I'm here in Romblon, which is a small island. Got stuck here when the country locked down. And I've just been treated like a king, like royalty here, even though I'm a tourist, I'm a foreigner, I don't belong here. But they've really treated me well. I've got a free place to stay. The vice governor accommodated me here. Even the meals have been covered. And I didn't know him before. I just ended up meeting him while I was here. So that's one example of just locals being so kind and hospitable. And I could tell you examples and examples and examples on end. But just the fact that people are kind and caring is one big learning lesson I've learned, Joel.
What do you, you've seen so much, way more than I have seen for sure. Is there any one spot that sticks out for you in particular?
Obviously there's the famous ones that everyone knows, like the Eiffel Tower or the Great Wall of China is incredible. The pyramids are spectacular. I want to kind of maybe highlight some that are not as well known. So because we're both Canadian, we both know Niagara Falls, but there's actually a bigger waterfalls, and it's actually between Brazil and Argentina, It's called Iguazu Falls. And actually, just truthfully, I didn't know much about that waterfalls, but it's actually the biggest waterfall in the world by volume. It's actually 3 times the size of Niagara. Niagara gets a little bit more press or kind of more famous because it's in Canada-US border, right? So it's North America. So this waterfalls in South America is 3 times as big as Niagara. And hardly anyone knows that. They're like, Iguazu? So I just wanted to highlight that. Incredible. And also Machu Picchu in Peru, the Inca Lost City, that was incredible. The energy of the place, just like the fact that they built the city literally in the mountains in the middle of nowhere is incredible. So Great Wall of China definitely stands out. The pyramids stand out. Iguazu Falls in terms of natural beauty. And I would recommend everyone does an animal safari once in your life, because we've all been to a zoo. It's so much different when you see animals in the wild, when you're staring like 2 meters away, you're staring a lion in the face with, he's ready to eat you basically, with no cage. And that's definitely something that I'll never forget. So the African safari is definitely high on the list as well.
It's kind of like the Tiger King reality edition,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Tiger King in real life.
Yeah. So you describe yourself as a digital nomad. Can you describe what that is?
Of course, Joel. Yeah, that's I would say a fairly new concept, and I'll just break it down by the word or the term itself. The word digital nomad or the phrase digital nomad, break it down. Digital means someone who's working online. Internet marketer, they've traditionally been called digital marketer, internet marketer. And then a nomad is someone who travels, obviously, nomadic. So when you combine the two, it's somebody who's working online while traveling. And we live in a day and age where we can work from the comforts of anywhere. A beach, a cafe, a restaurant, an Airbnb, a hostel, a hotel, and from the comforts of technology. Smartphones, tablets, laptops. They're so mobile and so portable. Like I'm doing this interview here on my iPhone, and I could do this anywhere, right? Literally, I could carry it and do it walking around as long as I have good internet connection, which thanks we have on this call here. Mm-hmm. So a digital nomad is someone who just be able to work online, doing a multitude of different types of things, which we can elaborate on. And they like to travel. So they're not stationed in a place. Some nomads might be. They might set a base in a famous place like Bali, which is a nomad hub, Chiang Mai, Thailand, which is a nomad hub. So they might set a base for maybe 6 months or a year, but then they'll pack up the backpack and then they'll go to the next place and still continue to generate income and still see this incredible world. So that's in a nutshell what a digital nomad is, Joel.
How did you first come to understand this concept, and was that something that you always kind of wanted to do and just didn't know the term, or is there like another way of how did you discover this?
Great question, Joel. So back in my 20s, early 30s, before I got married, I actually traveled a lot as a broke backpacker with very little money.
As we all do.
Yeah, we all have done that. Maybe the European backpacking trip after college or university. So I did that. I stayed in youth hostels. I did the couchsurfing.com thing where you're just staying in a couch and hitchhiking even. So that was my cheap way of traveling. And obviously we do that because we have no money. And the obstacle for people traveling is the money variable. Don't have enough money, can't take time off my job, have family commitments. We've heard all the excuses, quote unquote. So the internet gives us this power to work still, right? So I was already doing internet marketing. Joel and me, we've worked together on several different projects back in Vancouver, internet marketing related. So I was already doing internet marketing and I got married and had kids. So I thought I was just going to be in the suburbs for the rest of my life, maybe
white
until I'm
picket fences, yeah.
Yeah, the stereotype, right? So just didn't have the dog. I had the 3 kids, the wife, and the house. So I really love to travel, and my wife hadn't traveled as much, and we wanted to show all the kids. So it just seemed, it was the wrong time, but it was the right time, if you know what I mean. The wrong time is because our kids were young. We had just bought a place like 2 years before we ended up selling it. And we were stable. My wife had a stable job. I was well-connected in the Vancouver community. So the wrong time, like no one's crazy enough to travel with young kids. That was the wrong time. But it's also the right time because our kids were young. They weren't established in the school. So it was easier to take them then. before they made their friends, started enrolling in schools and ballet and taekwondo and karate, those kind of things. So it was, and there's no right time too, by the way. So it was just the right time for us, I would say. So it made sense. And we didn't have the money, so we ended up selling our stuff and still working online as well. So you might have to do that as well. And we're budgeting when we're traveling too. So we would stay in, even as a family, we would stay in hostels. There's like something called house sitting where you can actually stay at a house and just take care of the pets or the gardening, and then you can stay for free. You can do things like travel hacking to save money as well. So it just made sense for us to do this digital nomad lifestyle. And we're probably one of the only family digital nomads. Usually you think of a digital nomad as someone who's in their 20s, the surfer look. But we are definitely not surfer looking type of people. And we made it work for us as a family, Joel.
So you mentioned travel hacking. What is that?
Travel hacking, great question. So I'm not an expert at this by any means, but basically in a nutshell, travel hacking means you're using credit card, miles and points to get free or discounted flights and hotels. You can use like Status and most of the major airline conglomerates, they'll actually have these point schemes where you just basically sign up for credit cards, and then you'll get points for signing up, points for retaining, and points for monthly spend. You accumulate those points and you trade in the points for discounted flights. I mean, you can fly across the Pacific or Atlantic for like less than 50 US. Sometimes you're just paying for taxes. So there's a whole community around travel hacking. Your listeners can just Google travel hacking. There's a famous website I'll give a shout out to, the Points Guy. He's one of the world's foremost authorities on travel hacking. It differs country to country, obviously. So US is different than Canada, different than Europe, different from Australia. Usually it's more limited to Western countries, in Europe, North America, and Australia. But yeah, travel hacking is a huge topic. You probably should get an expert on that topic to enlighten your listeners, because I'm definitely not an expert in it.
Have you always had the travel bug, and where does that love for travel come from?
Yeah, I would say no. I didn't always have the travel bug. From zero when I was born to early 20s, I hadn't traveled much because I'm from Vancouver, which is near the U.S. border. Obviously, cross over the border a few times a year, doing your shopping and getaways into Washington State in the U.S. And then my ethnic background is Indian. So I'd been to India several times to visit relatives like uncles, aunts, cousins, etc. in India. So I'd only been to 3 countries by the time I was in my early 20s. And then really the travel bug, as they say, hit me or bit me or hit and bit me in the early 20s. I'd finished university, graduated, wasn't sure what to do with my life. So I did the Teach in Japan thing. I taught English there for a year. Then I ended up saving enough money to travel around Asia. I did a working holiday in Australia, traveled around Australia, New Zealand, did a working holiday in London, and then traveled around Europe. So I was actually kind of already doing the working and traveling thing, but it was more just casual jobs like waiting, bartending, working in a call center, teaching English, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say in my early 20s is when really I got infected, because once you start traveling, you just realize like, oh man, this world is so beautiful and I have such limited time. Most of us are going to live until maybe 70, 80, 90 if we're lucky. And, a lot of times we'll wait till retirement, but I feel waiting too long, because by the time we're retired, we're too unhealthy. Depends how much, you work out and how well you eat, but usually we're too, I don't know what the right phrase is, but maybe not in the best shape to be able to travel as well as we can maybe in our 20s, 30s, or 40s. So I advocate for traveling young, traveling often, and finding a way to travel in spite of the circumstances. So if it's worked for me, it can work for you. And I really believe that travel is the best education for us as humans in terms of all the life lessons which we alluded to earlier. But especially, as a dad of 3, my kids have learned way more in that 1 year of travel than they have in public school back in Vancouver or private school here in the Philippines. Not that there's nothing wrong with schooling, obviously. I'm a big advocate of it. I've done a lot of schooling myself, and we're big proponents of formal traditional education, but also supplementing with the experiential, hands-on learning through the power of travel.
So you have 3 kids of various ages, And obviously I would describe it as an upbringing that's not typical of, especially in North America and Vancouver, where it's really expensive to travel anywhere, right? So what do you
Yes.
think the impact on them, and what have maybe some of their like, I guess, lessons that they've learned, and how do they view the world now that they've seen so much more than there's the age group that they're in and their other children that they're exposed to?
Yeah, and I'm just super grateful for this opportunity to be travel with them, because here I'm in the Philippines. It's a third world country. A lot of Filipinos have never even left their province. They don't have a passport. They haven't left the country. So definitely we're privileged, quote unquote, to be in the West, or growing up in a country of affluence, or the first world, right? So just want to acknowledge that fact too. So in terms of our kids, they've learned a lot. There's a traditional schooling. There's homeschooling. There's also something called world schooling, unschooling, life schooling, road schooling. There's that whole educational paradigm of philosophy, which has really emerged in the last 5 or 10 years, where parents aren't necessarily wanting their kids just to learn from in a classroom with a teacher, with a textbook, but do things like I mentioned, like doing road trips with them, teaching them about animals by doing animal safari, teaching them about history by going to the Inca ruins, teaching them about geography by actually showing them volcanoes and mountains and oceans and, like scuba diving, snorkeling, like that kind of learning is way, 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 way more educational than a textbook, obviously, right? Because we're immersed in it and we are sensing it with all the senses, not just our brains, but our soul, our spirit, our heart, our emotions. And memories are far more important than materialism, I believe. And so, in terms of what they've learned, I'll give you an example maybe that would help. Kids in general love things. They love toys. You'll see kids and they'll start fighting over a toy. Like even from a young age, they have this kind of inbuilt desire for materialism, like new toys, and obviously commercialism and advertising has its part to do that during, Disney, and you'll see all these commercials for the latest Hasbro toys or Playmobil toys or Lego toys. So materialism has hit us as adults, but also hit our children. And our kids had a lot of toys back in Vancouver, way more than they needed. And every Christmas, every birthday, every social function, they keep getting more and more and more and more things. So one quick story, Joel, is we actually volunteer when we travel. It's called volunteerism. It's not just traveling for the sake of vanity or taking pictures of the latest Instagram selfie or TikTok video, but it's also traveling for the sake of impact and making a difference and helping the communities we travel in. So we volunteer when we travel. We partner with a few different organizations. One is Orphanage. So we ended up volunteering several orphanages when we traveled. A few were in Cape Town, South Africa, in Manaus, Brazil, in Medellin, Colombia. And I'll give you the quick story about Medellin, Colombia, which is a digital nomad hotspot as well. We were in, it's called Youth with a Mission, Youth with a Mission, so YWAM, and we were at this YWAM base at this orphanage, and our kids traveled with a few toys, and it was really impactful. We stayed in the orphanage for 2 weeks. At the end, our kids said, "Mom and Dad, would it be okay to give away our toys to the orphans?" And even now, as I'm doing this interview, I get choked up because my kids had learned the importance of giving back and making a difference. Not just wanting more toys, but giving the toys that they love to these orphans who had nothing. So that's one life lesson. Like, how could they learn that in any other way, but actually interacting with the orphans and staying with them and seeing the difference between their riches and the orphans' lack of parents and the poverty, so to speak, right? And their riches turn into generosity and love and compassion and empathy and giving. So yeah, that's a quick example of how travel has impacted my 3 kids, Joel.
Wow, yeah. That's definitely, I don't think, something that you will find in North America. There's just not that, I think. I mean, well, there's not really orphanages in Vancouver, right? So I think you're right. I think that's amazing that they actually can see, I mean, obviously it's horrible, but I think it's important to see it and not just learn it on the news, and not to just have it, spoon fed through, I guess, teachers, social media, what have you. So that's amazing. So for somebody, I want to go back to this digital nomad concept. So for somebody who's listening to this and they say, wow, that, seeing all that stuff, experiencing, all those different countries and, and all that, how can somebody start out and take that step to become a digital nomad?
Great question again, Joel. No wonder you're doing these interviews. You're asking all these great questions for your
Thank you.
listeners. I'm sure your listeners are already having that in their mind. So how can you as a listener become a digital nomad? I really, truly feel this. Anybody can be a digital nomad because of the power of the internet. The internet knows no color. It knows no passport. It knows no geography. It knows no income status. It knows no, sexual orientation, knows no marital status, etc. So the internet is the great solution, one of the great solutions to the world's problems, obviously, right? Not their solution, but one of the solutions, right? So through the internet, I believe everyone can work online. Obviously, if you have an African passport or a Middle Eastern passport or a country with a third world country passport, maybe it's not as easy to get into countries or get visas, etc. But in general, everyone can work online. This is pretty much fact, quote unquote, depending on your internet speed, etc. So you can work online. And how do you start? This is the harder question. How do you start? Because if you do a Google search, Joel, how to make money online, you know this, right? And I'm sure some of your listeners have done this. You'll find millions and millions of different websites. How to make money online, the internet marketing gurus, buy my course, join my mastermind, watch my webinar, etc. So I really feel you need to start from a point of passion, okay? So I'm not here to sell anyone anything on this call here. I'm here to just educate from my own experience and hopefully share any inspiration I can with your listeners here. So start with a point of passion. What are you truly, truly, truly passionate about? It could be people, it could be the environment, it could be animals, and then figure out how to monetize that passion digitally. So there's a lot of ways you can monetize passions digitally. Joel is actually an author, as am I, so you could write books on any topic, pets, environment, cars, you name it, right? So you could write books. And then there's something called repurposing your content. So I'm not saying start with the book. I'm just saying that's one of the ways you can make money online, writing books. Obviously, the amount of books you need to sell is quite significant for you to make money, because average book might be like $5 for Kindle or less, maybe $20 for hard or soft cover or less, right? So we're talking about not a lot of money per piece, but per volume it can add up, right? So not just selling books, but also repurposing that book into different forms, right? You can create not just the book, but the content of the book, the content of your knowledge. It's called the information or content marketing. So you're repurposing it from a written form to audio form, like we're doing in a podcast, to video form, like on YouTube or Vimeo, to turning it into a course on things like Skillshare or Udemy or Thinkific or Kajabi, turning into a mastermind group where it's like you're teaching your knowledge or content or information to a small group of people, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 people. And then the highest leverage of your time is you're going to share that knowledge and charge for it on a one-on-one basis. So what they call it IP, intellectual property, is worth money, no matter what the topic of your expertise is. So it has to be, you have to be, an expert is kind of a debatable term, right? I mean, as long as you know more than someone else, you can teach them. You might not be expert in the sense of like the 10,000 hours to be an expert kind of philosophy from Malcolm Gladwell. But as long as you know more than the other person and your credibility, reputation, success, results, then you can teach others in many forms, like I mentioned. And all those are monetizable. Coaching per hour could be anywhere from like $100 an hour to some people charge 200, 300, 400, 500 an hour, 1,000 an hour, right? So again, based on your results and your credibility, your reputation, how much you feel you're worth, that's a whole separate topic, right? Charging for what you're worth. Coaching, small groups, masterminds, online courses. You can sell stuff on Amazon and eBay, Alibaba, etc. You can do graphic design. You can do website design. You can do ghostwriting like Joel, our friend here, does. You can do book writing. You can also speak while you travel. Like I'm an international speaker as well, so I speak as I travel as well. Getting paid for it by a company or organization, or speaking for free and then selling one of your products after. You can do webinars, sell stuff on there. So you can tell here the sky is literally not the limit. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, and we can elaborate on any of those single things I mentioned.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I think where I want to start is, so you mentioned speaking. I think speaking is a great way to make money, to get your voice out there. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a international speaker? Because I know you did. I wanted to talk about specifically your TEDx talk. And how did you get involved? And again, yeah, what would you recommend people who want to start speaking?
Great questions. I love these questions, man. Every question you have asked have been great. So what would you, how would you get started as a speaker? So I would say the way I started it, there's two ways I started, okay? One is Toastmasters. So I've been a Toastmaster for a good 10 years plus. I'm no longer one like currently, but I've got myself up there in the Toastmaster ranking. So that's how I started. I was, a little unknown fact about me, I was voted most shy in high school. You know, they have the high school annuals. I was super shy.
I don't believe that. Wow, really?
Yeah. Seriously. I have my annual to prove it, my high school annual. Windsor Secondary School, North Vancouver, Ricky Shetty, most shy. So anyway, yeah, I got voted most shy, and obviously now I'm more outgoing. I broke the shell, so to speak, by travels, but also by Toastmasters. You know, when I first started Toastmasters, I was doing my by ahs, by you knows, and I'll still say it on this interview. I'll be saying so's a lot. I'm still working on the so's. And there'll be some words I keep using over and over when I'm speaking, when I'm doing webinars, when I'm doing podcasts. So even though I've been speaking for a good like 5 to 8 years roughly, I'm still working on my speaking skills. But I started as a Toastmaster, and that's a great place to start, or first place. Secondly, I would recommend meetup.com. A lot of meetup organizers are looking for speakers to share their knowledge. And if you cannot find a meetup, start one. You know, again, any topic under the sun, you can have a meetup around that topic. And then you'll find other people with that common interest, and just be the speaker, be the leader. And then again, the more you speak, the better you'll get. So those would be two suggestions I would give to your audience: Toastmasters and meetup.
And so how did you become a TEDx speaker?
Yeah, I paid a lot of money and bribed my way in. No, just kidding, just kidding. You're actually not allowed to pay to be a TEDx speaker. No, basically what happened is I was here in the Philippines, and I'll kind of share a little backstory. Joel and me know each other also from TEDx, like we've connected through that as well with TEDx Stanley Park. But I was volunteering at TEDx in Vancouver, and I'd actually applied to be a TEDx speaker twice in Vancouver. I believe one was at SFU and one was at TEDx East Van and TEDx SFU. I got rejected both times. For whatever reason, maybe my topic wasn't on point, or I wasn't the right fit for the theme of the TEDx event. So I got rejected twice, you know, drowned my head in shame, so to speak. And then I came here to the Philippines, and I was, again, looking for TEDx opportunities. And I found that there was one in a different province. Like, we were based in Manila, and it was in a city called Tacloban, which is a few islands away. And I just applied. I'll kind of share with you my strategy. I didn't apply front door. The front door is like, you go to TEDx.com, TED.com, and you look for all the TEDx events in your city or province or state, and you just start applying. That's the front door approach. Kind of like a job interview, front door, job application, speaker application. There's a backdoor approach, which is networking. And I did that. I actually looked for the organizers of the TEDx events near Manila, and I messaged them on Facebook. I said, hey, I'm from Vancouver. I'm living here in the Philippines. I'd love to speak at a TEDx event. And one of the organizers messaged me back on Messenger, Facebook, and said to me, "We'd love to have you as a speaker. Our event's coming up in November. You're in." And I was like, "Whoa, no application, nothing like that." And literally it was as easy as a Facebook message. I didn't hesitate. I just took action, and I got rewarded by being offered a TEDx spot through Facebook Messenger alone. And once I'd been accepted through that Messenger conversation, then I had to fill out the application, send in my headshot, my bio, website, etc. So that's literally the story of how I became a TEDx speaker.
That's awesome. What did you do to prepare your speech? Like, you obviously, it sounded like you didn't have anything in mind when you started, and so how did you go from nothing to amazing speech?
Yeah, again, I'm a big advocate of passion. Again, I might be repeating myself, but start with your passion. So like my passion is travel and being a digital nomad, kind of what we've been talking about in this interview, family travel, etc. So I talked about that. 3 steps to be a digital nomad. It's on, you can share the link on the show notes. It's on YouTube and also on the TED.com website, my TEDx talk. How did I prepare? There's a few ways that you can prepare for a big speech or a TEDx level type of speech. Some people write down their whole script, which is a good idea. Some people will just share it amongst close friends or family and then kind of do mock speech, getting feedback. I did those things. I wrote out the speech. I did mock speeches. I just literally recorded myself in front of my phone doing the speech, watching myself, watching everything, my eye contact, my hand gestures, my pitch, my tone, how my stance, my posture was, everything. I dissected myself, analyzed myself, critiqued myself. I allowed others to critique me. I changed the content, tweaked the content. Every word you say is important. It's only 18 minutes. They say the most important 18 minutes of your life. They say, if you had 18 minutes to live, what message would you give to the world? And that was my message. Memories over materialism, and savor family, and see this world because life is short, right? That was my message. And I was able to share that to an audience of 800 in person, but now an audience of potentially millions, if not billions, around the world. So those are some of my techniques for preparing for my talk, Joel.
Cool. All right. I still want to touch on the digital nomad aspect, because there's so many different, like you mentioned, there's so many different jobs that you can do online. You can graphic design, web design, writing, like all that we mentioned, but you need other skills too. You need to know how to market yourself. You need to know how to sell yourself. You need to know how to do client relations. What are some of the things that people can do to learn these skills? I think, they're entrepreneur skills that will help you become a digital nomad.
Yeah, I think I mentioned one of the platforms. One was Udemy. Udemy, you can get courses for very cheap. You can buy courses on sale with the Udemy coupon code or Udemy flash sales for like $10 US, $20 US, really affordable for most people, right? And then even a lot of instructors give away their course. If you can't afford the course, just message the instructor, look them up on Facebook, stalk them and message them and just say, hey, I saw you have a course, sorry I can't afford it. Would you be able to give me a coupon code in exchange for review? And most instructors, hey, message me. I have like 20 Udemy courses. I'll give you guys coupon codes. Happy to do that, to give back and help you guys out. So Udemy is a great place. Just search for the topic you're interested in. As an entrepreneur, a business owner, one of the key skills is branding, especially personal branding. Learning branding is vital. Learning marketing, as you mentioned, is vital. And sales. A lot of us don't like sales. A lot of people say the phrase, I hate sales, I hate selling. But remember, we're selling all the time. If you're ever recommended a movie, you're selling. If you recommend a restaurant, you're selling. We're selling, quote unquote, all the time to friends and family. We're selling movies, selling clothing, like, oh, this nice place to buy clothes, etc. A nice restaurant around the corner, right? So we're selling all the time. So I think if you look at it that way, it might ease the burden in terms of thinking you need to sell and ask people for money, etc. Right? So learning those skills through Udemy, YouTube. YouTube. It's kind of hard to sort through the mess or the junk, so to speak, because there's so many YouTube videos, right? But even YouTube has a lot of amazing content. You just have to find the right ones. You might have to filter through a lot of junk to find the right ones. Look for the amount of views, usually that indicates if it's a good video, if it has a lot of views, and also a lot of comments, right? If people are commenting and engaging with the content, that means it's usually a video and a good resource for learning. Books, obviously, on Kindle, you can buy books or get them for free again. Local library, you can get books as well. And there's a lot of different resources. Asking people, I would say as well, just ask someone who is more knowledgeable for advice. Most people who become successful are willing to give back and help those who are starting out. So yeah, hopefully those tips help aspiring on new entrepreneurs or digital nomads.
What what Udemy courses would you recommend? They can be either yours or somebody else's.
Mine. I have about 15 or 20 different courses. They all are into the mastery branding. So I have branding mastery, I have social media mastery, I have blog mastery, I have podcasting mastery, I have YouTube mastery, I have digital nomad mastery, I have travel mastery, I have public speaking mastery. I got to take a breath. I have Amazon mastery about self-publishing, etc. So I have several different courses online, and I feel they're good. I've got several hundred different reviews on those courses saying they're good. So I didn't have to pay those people to say it, but they've said that they're good. So yeah, my courses are good, but also, just go to Udemy. Again, do the same thing what I mentioned on YouTube. Do a search on whatever topic you're curious about, like public speaking or financial management, whatever. And then look for the reviews, the ratings, and then the number of students. And that will be a good indicator of what courses to buy on Udemy.
So I first knew you as the daddy blogger. Have you always enjoyed writing, or was that something you just kind of fell into over time?
A little bit of both. I always like journaling. I like processing my thoughts through journaling or talking. Some people are introverted. They might like to just journal, self-reflect. Some people are more extroverted. They like to grab a cup of coffee with a friend and then externalize their thoughts. So I'm kind of a fusion between the two. I like socializing, but I also like writing, self-reflection, blogging, introspection, spirituality, meditation, that kind of stuff. So in terms of transitioning to daddy blogger, when I became a dad, I'll just quickly share with you a little backstory. So my parents actually had arranged marriage. They're Indian. They moved to Canada. Their marriage wasn't so good. They ended up having a divorce. And that left me with a lot of fears about getting married myself, also becoming a dad myself. A lot of fears, insecurities, self-doubts. Am I going to get a divorce? Am I going to be a bad dad, right? So the reason I started Daddy Blogger is really self-healing, so to speak, to process my fears around fatherhood, to learn from other good dads. And that's why I started this mission, Daddy Blogger. It was very much a small mission for myself only. Even if no one read it, I was happy just for me to process what it means to be a dad. And then slowly it picked up steam from Daddy Blogger being a local Vancouver-based blog to being more nationally recognized, getting readers from Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, to becoming more global, getting readers globally, from obviously US, our neighbor, Europe, Australia, Asia, etc. So it became a global brand in the span of, I would say, 6 months to a year. Soon afterwards, I started getting sponsorship opportunities, paid and also in kind. Honestly, a lot more in kind. A lot of companies would email me out of the blue. Just in my inbox, I would get Ricky@daddyblogger.com, opportunity to work together, partnership opportunity, etc. From big brands. I've worked with big car brands like Lexus and Disney, Apple. I worked with HP, so many. And I got started, the UPS and the FedEx person started get to know my address really well. They started sending me stuff in the mail, like big boxes of stuff. I've got laptops before, tablets, cell phones, printers, luxury cars to drive, not to keep, to drive for a week, like test drive it, and then to write about how we like it as a family car, what do you call it, a Lexus SUV, like a $60,000 car. They were just let me drive for a week, I was just like kind of in shock because I was like, whoa, you're trusting me with a $60,000 car? You know, obviously it's insured by Lexus. They can afford it if I got in an accident. And then they started flying me to places, you know, like I got flown by Lexus to Nashville, Tennessee, by Volkswagen Canada. They flew me across the prairies to drive across Canada and promote the new Volkswagen line. I got flown in helicopters. I was living the life, so to speak, you know, celebrity level, without making the Brad Pitt paychecks, you know, just without getting the money. I was just getting treated really well at restaurants. They were like, you're a blogger, you're a foodie. Here's a 5-course meal for your wife, for your kids. Eat whatever you want from the menu. And the bill's on us, right? And just write nice things about us, hopefully. So yeah, I really got treated well as a blogger. Even as I traveled, you know, I didn't really talk about me blogging as a traveler. I was able to stay in hotels around the world, eat in restaurants around the world, get sightseeing tours around the world, all for free. So blogging has been an incredible life-changing experience for me personally. It sounds like because of all the free stuff, but also because of the impact I've made. I've had new dads email me, message me saying like, hey, I was in the verge of like, I'll share a quick short story. A 19-year-old boy, a teenager, you know, he got his girlfriend pregnant and then he was going to be a dad and he was so nervous, 19 being a dad, you know, you can imagine, right? And he messaged me, he was actually from Vancouver. And he's like, hey, I see you're so passionate about fatherhood. I'm so nervous I'm going to be a dad. I don't know who to turn to. I'm afraid to tell anyone who would think about getting an abortion. I said to him, come over. I lived in East Van. I was like, come over, man. You know, just we'll hang out, we'll talk. He came over, and after 1 or 2 hours together, he just felt so encouraged. He's like, you had all this fears too, Ricky. You know, I feel so much better, and I don't need to be afraid. And now they are parents, and they have a wonderful kid, and I feel, you know, even if I just impacted that one guy, prevented that one abortion, I'm pro-life, by the way, so just if I prevented, no offense to any pro-choicers, don't want to get into that, but, you know, just the fact that I was able to save, quote-unquote, that one kid maybe from abortion, and that the dad, I encouraged him and inspired him and equipped him with resources, they would have all been worth it just for that one dad and that one kid who could be the next Prime Minister of Canada, who knows, right? So that one kid who's been born with the help of me, not the help in the hospital, but just with the help of my encouragement to the dad, right? So that kind of story, I've got so many of those kind of stories. I started a dad's community group in Vancouver called Why We Are Dads with Di Manuel, and then obviously I wrote books about fatherhood, etc. So yeah, fatherhood's a huge passion of mine, Joel.
So you mentioned personal branding as being super important for entrepreneur or a digital nomad. How did you balance your personal brand when everyone was throwing free stuff your way? And was there some sort of process that where you would not work with somebody?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%, Joel. I will never, ever work with something that conflicts with my value system. So as a dad, I don't want to advocate or promote smoking, drinking, gambling. And I got approached by gambling companies a lot, especially online gaming. I mean, it's debatable whether that's good or bad, online gaming. Online gambling. It's debatable whether that's good or bad, but just as a dad, I know some people are prone to addiction with online gambling or just gambling in general. I didn't want to advocate about gambling, even though they're willing to pay me. I still get emails all the time from online gaming websites saying they'll pay me to put links to the site, to write about that site. I say no without even considering pricing. Pricing is irrelevant. Offer me 10,000 US, 100,000, I'll say no in a heartbeat, because my integrity is not sellable. I'm not going to sell my integrity, my value system for any price tag. So I'll say no, flat no to anything gambling related. I'll say flat no to anything alcohol or cigarette related too. I don't smoke, but I'll drink here and there socially. But I just don't want to advocate for that on my website. It's family friendly, right? So those are 3 examples of something I don't allow on my site. There's an integrity issue when you don't like a product. How do you write about it if you've been given that for free? That's a whole separate conversation. But and this happened to me, we'll go to a restaurant, I won't like the meal, or I'll be sent a product, and it's like, I'll give you an example of some cars they've asked me to drive, and it's just not workable as a family because my stroller won't fit in the boot in the trunk. So there's a few ways I can go around it. One way is to write about the positive things and just not mention the bad things. If it's something I still support, but the bad thing doesn't outweigh the support benefits, if you know what I mean. Or I'll just flat out say, I like your product, but it's just not a good fit for my audience. Even after I received it, I'll say that. And that's, again, integrity. Because I can't write about something I don't personally feel is good for another dad or another family, right? So I would say if you are strong in line with your integrity and with your value system, you'll filter any opportunities based on that. And then you can just say no. And people will respect you for that. They'll say, wow, like, even though we've sent you this product, even though we had agreement that you write good things, but the fact that you don't think it's good and you're not writing about that, we respect that. We respect that, and we're okay with it. So I've had to say no several times, and I've had to not write about things just out of personal morality or ethics.
You wrote a book. I want to talk about your Amazon bestseller. You wrote 10 books. There's one in particular I want to talk about, but feel free to elaborate and talk about the others. But the wisdom you learned as a dad, you mentioned that in the previous question. But what are some life lessons that you gave that new dad, or the dad that was thinking about abortion but decided not to, or anyone who is going through that process and that fear?
Yeah, I do have 10 books, Joel. They're all on Amazon and Kindle, both the print version, also the digital ebook version as well. So my books are the Wisdom from Daddy's book, which is a fatherhood book. I also have a series about travel called Exploring the Continents. It features all 7 continents. And then I have a couple comic books about parenting and marriage as well. And I've also been a part of a few collaborations, which I don't count as part of the 10. The 10 are all under my name as the only author. So in terms of what wisdom I've learned from interviewing 100 dads, so just like you're doing to me today, is you're interviewing me on Zoom. I also did the interviews with 100 dads on Google Hangout and also Zoom and Skype over the course of about a year. And all that knowledge from picking their brains, I summarized in a book. And it's so hard to summarize the summary, because the summary was like 120.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but I want to give the question justice by answering it. So the book's 120 pages, but what's the kind of the key lessons there? So the key lessons from the book are, love is spelled time. That's the phrase that really stands out for me. Love is spelled time. So as dads, as men, we are traditionally the breadwinners, the providers and protectors, societally, historically, culturally, globally, men are that role, being the providers financially and then being the protectors in terms of safety, security. Women have been traditionally only more of the nurturers or the supporters, but that's changed, obviously. 21st century here, 2020, both men and women are working, both moms and dads are working, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I want to say, kids are being raised by daycares. Again, debatable, contentious issue. I'm not afraid to speak my mind, but I don't feel that's the best way to parent a child. I feel mom or dad or both has to be the primary caregiver, right? Not the daycare. So again, debatable topic. So love is spelled time. What does this mean? So as dads, we're so driven to make money that we often forget who we're driven to make money for. We'll work crazy hours. We'll work 9 to 5. We'll work evenings. As entrepreneurs, we'll work sunrise to sunset, right? Until our hairs go gray. We'll go to a networking event after networking event, and we'll work like crazy. And we'll be so exhausted by the time we come home that we'll crash in the bed and then rinse and repeat, right? So love is spelled time. So at the end of the day, are our kids going to remember Daddy worked like crazy, he made lots of money, or are they going to remember Daddy hung out with me, making the puzzle, reading me the book, saying bedtime prayers with me, having that family dinner together. You know this, Joel. Your listeners know this. Family is central to our identities, to our identity formation. If we have a broken family, we become broken kids who become broken adults who in turn break other adults, right? So if the family unit is broken, society's broken, the world's broken, right? So I really feel as dads, again, traditional model, I feel our dads are a little bit more of the leaders, and our job is to lead our family in those important areas I mentioned. Those dinners, those are non-negotiable. Those bedtime prayers, the bedtime stories, the hugs, the kisses, the I love yous. And that's how we spell time, love to our kids, T-I-M-E, quality time. I believe that time provision is more important than financial provision, because at the end of the day, you know, I didn't know what your case is with your dad and all. My dad provided for me. You know, I had a car when I was 16. I had a university education by my mom and dad, but I didn't have that quality time. That was my father wound, so to speak, right? And I was yearning and lacking that the father figure. So really, as dads, and as men, as you know, you're newly married, so as husbands, we need to be there for our wives, for our spouses, for our kids, for our families, not just in money, but in time. So I'm beating a horse to death here. Like time is the central message of my book. Quality time with your kids is second to none. That should be our primary focus as dads.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my dad was definitely the provider. He's a lawyer and he worked long hours, as you said. But I always remember he would teach, he would coach rather my soccer games, my baseball games, and would always come out and watch me. So those are the things I remember. It's not the dinners that he skipped or the times he wasn't there, you know. So I think that, yeah, very important. Do you have a writing routine?
Writing routine, yes and no. You know, there's a saying, writer's block. I definitely suffer from that. There are times when I'm super inspired, and there are times when I'm not inspired at all. It could be just the busyness of my state of mind or the business of my work schedule. And the other times when I'm just like so driven to write. So part of it's a little bit of circumstantial, I would say, or unpredictable. But when I do get into those writing zones, I definitely like solitude. I don't, because I have a wife and 3 young kids, obviously I'm getting distracted. They'll hop on me while I'm writing, etc. And my lock isn't strong enough to keep them out. So definitely need solitude. And when I've written my 10 books, and that could be another question in itself. How the heck do you write 10 books being a married dad with 3 young kids and having online business, right? Definitely very difficult. It takes some time management. But I would say block off time in your schedule. You know, if you have a calendar on your phone, just put it down saying Joel's writing time, Ricky's writing time, Sally's writing time, whatever you want to call it, right? So writing time is non-negotiable. Put in your calendar and then put it as located somewhere else outside of your home. Because if you're at your home, you're going to find distractions. I got to cook dinner, got to watch the news, Netflix movie, got to watch the news, you know, got to scroll on Facebook and find out what all your friends are doing, etc. So if you put a dedicated time and place that's outside of your home, again, this just works for me, okay? I don't want to say this is for everyone. It just works for me. Some people are okay with writing at their home, in an office or whatever, man cave. For me, I needed to get out of the home, get into the zone. So for me, and it's kind of funny because I'm saying get into solitude. The zone for me was the McDonald's on Boundary and Hastings.
I know that one well.
Grandview Highway. Yeah, Grandview Highway there. Grandview Highway McDonald's. So I would go there. I would just sit in a corner with the comfy, the cushion seats, and I would bring my laptop and not have internet there. So just sitting there and writing continuously until I'd written enough, till I got tired and maybe my back started hurting a little bit, then go home. And that worked really well for me, Joel. Second thing that worked really well for me is making my deadline public. So I'll give you a quick example. I published my first book on Father's Day 2012. And on January 1st, 2012, I made it public. I'm going to publish a book on Father's Day. So I gave myself 6 months. I put it on Facebook, and it forced me, because I was like, oh man, I'm accountable now because I put it on Facebook. Then I'm going to have a Father's Day book out. So I had a deadline, and I made that deadline public, and now I was accountable to my Facebook community. That helped as well, having deadline and accountability. And then, as I want to reiterate, dedicated time and place to write.
So you mentioned fear in a couple instances. Can you, if you feel appropriate, or if you want to, how do you personally deal with fear, and what are some tools that either dads or anybody in general can use to push past that fear to get to really strive for those dreams?
How do I deal with fear? I run behind a bush and I hide for as long as possible. No, just joking. I struggle, man. I struggle. So I've struggled with fear. I've struggled with depression. I'm very much open book here. I've struggled with depression, fear of judgment from others, financial failure, and just isolating myself. And I don't think I've dealt with it in the right way. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask Joel, but I've dealt with it. Not like addictions, like some people might be addicted to alcohol or gambling or pornography. I didn't do any of those things, but I just isolated. That was my addiction, the addiction of isolation and withdrawal, and not connecting with people, like staying home a lot. That was kind of my ways of unhealthily dealing with it. Some people eat, right? Like they'll just eat to cope with the fear in a general term, but maybe failure in a kind of broader term there. How do you healthily deal with fear might be the better question here. So how did I healthily deal with fear? I'm just being vulnerable here, as you can tell here. I dealt with that unhealthily through like binge eating or isolating. But how did I deal with it healthily? I think just expressing it, like, just the fact that I'm saying that to your audience here means I've overcome the fear, because I'm not afraid that people are judging Ricky here, saying, oh, Ricky was overeating, Ricky was depressed, Ricky was isolating himself. That's actually a strength, the fact that I'm sharing that, because most people don't. Most people don't share that they do those things, but we all do those things in different ways, right? We all get excited about something. At the beginning, we're so pumped, so excited, rah, rah, rah. And then we get excited, and increases. You hit a roadblock. It could be relationship difficulties, it could be financial difficulties, it could be health difficulties. And then we retreat. So we need to somehow turn back from the retreat by talking to a friend, by just sharing it publicly on a blog, on a podcast to the world to hear, or just journaling. Yeah, so there's different ways it can work for you. But I would say definitely vulnerability is the key to conquering fear, and then sharing it, right? Either with close spouse, friend, sibling, parent, or publicly if you feel compelled or okay with it. And when you're open to sharing your vulnerability, guess what? We all have been there. We've all struggled, and it gives them, the people are listening, you guys who are listening, maybe it gives you guys opportunity to say, hey, I've also dealt with that isolation struggle. I've dealt with that depression struggle. I've dealt with that hiding behind the bush metaphor, right? So, yeah, I've dealt with it unhealthily, Joel, and hopefully a little bit of healthiness by being vulnerable.
Well, thanks for sharing, Ricky. I would say those are my go-to bad habits as well. It's definitely cutting myself off for sure, which is easy for me to do as a writer. Overeating as well. That's a big one. Yeah, my wife, she makes chocolates at home, so it's easy to do.
Yeah.
I've got one last question. And this is one that I generally ask my my audience or my guest, and that is there a book that has particularly influenced you in your life, and how?
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend a couple. I'll cheat a little bit by recommending two.
Please.
Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. It's all about purpose, and there's another book also. It's also about purpose. It Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Because I feel I'm very purpose-driven in my life, or in my fatherhood, in my parenting. I run a purpose-driven business, purpose-driven travel, etc. So purpose has been a defining feature of my life, and a lot of people struggle with purpose. Why am I on this planet, and why do I exist, and what should I do with my life, right? Those kind of big life philosophical questions. Well, if you have those, which I'm sure all of us have had at some point, many points, then get those books. Purpose-Driven Life. I'll spoil it a little. I'll just say the first sentence of the book. The first sentence of the book, Purpose-Driven Life, is this: it's not about you. Yeah, let that sink in. The purpose of your life is not about you. It's about others. The impact you can make on this world, the legacy you can leave, the difference you can make, right? So, if you like that kind of philosophy on it's not about you or being other-centric, grab that book. And Start With Why is kind of a fusion between personal and business. It's more business-oriented. It talks about how companies such as Apple, they're purpose-driven, and that's why people are willing to sleep outside their stores in the middle of the night, in the cold of New York City in the winter, just to get the latest iPhone, tablet, smartwatch, etc. Right? So Apple is very purpose-driven, whereas something like Samsung, no offense to Samsung, great company, but they aren't as purpose-driven. They're more like tech-driven. They create great products, but they don't have that rabid fan base where people are willing to sleep outside of a Samsung store. I didn't know. I have never seen people sleeping or heard about people sleeping outside Samsung. So Apple's very purpose-driven, and that's why they're one of the most successful companies in the history of the world. So we can learn from companies like Apple, and we can implement that in our own businesses and in our own lives, being having purpose-driven business and being purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and having a purpose-driven podcast too, like yours, Joel, and purpose-driven books like yours and mine, Joel. So yeah, I would say definitely the Purpose-Driven Life again by Rick Warren, and secondary Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end it. Thanks so much, Ricky, for being on my show. Really appreciate your time. If people want to find you, what's the best place to look you up and reach out?
Yeah, you can check out daddyblogger.com. That's my forte, fatherhood and family. You can just Google Ricky Shetty. I have lots of different resources online. Everything from private coaching. If anything I've said resonates with you, I'd love to coach you on that subject. Whatever of the many subjects I kind of brought up here. Coaching, I offer that. I also have online courses. I have a podcast as well, by the way, Digital Nomad Mastery, where I've interviewed 500 plus digital nomads. It's the largest collection of digital nomad interviews in the world, Digital Nomad Mastery. I also have some virtual summits online and books. Yeah, a lot of books on Amazon too. So just Google Ricky Shetty, or go to search on Udemy, on Amazon, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, and as of a few weeks ago, TikTok. I'm now a TikToker too. So you can see and watch Ricky dancing on TikTok too. So there you go. A lot of different ways to find me, just Ricky Shetty or daddyblogger.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Ricky, for taking the time again.
Thank you, Joel. You're doing a great job with the podcast, and it's great to reconnect with you. All the best over there in Vancouver, and all the best to your listeners, no matter where in the world you're listening from. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.